Hello, everyone, and welcome to our first session in the Intelligent Building How-To webinar series presented by Siemens, Access Communications, and Catalyst. I'm Brian Baum, Siemens North America Marketing and Communications Manager. In today's session, we will be discussing how office workspace and building infrastructure are key elements towards creating an intelligent building. The discussion will be led by Siemens Intelligent Building expert Bob Allen. Prior to Siemens, Bob worked at Honeywell Building Solutions and has spent over 15 years in the IT industry. Recently, Bob was appointed as the Vice Chair of the Continental Automated Building Association's Intelligent Building Council. Joining Bob today is the Managing Director of Catalyst, Johan van Niekerk. Johan has more than 10 years experience in workspace management technology in intelligent buildings and over 20 years in information communications technology. Johan's expertise encompasses design and implementation of smart technology that helps drive efficiencies in the workspace. So before we begin the discussion, we would like to make sure our audience is clear on how to submit questions during the webinar. If you do not see the full GoToWebinar panel on your screen, look for the small GoToWebinar widget on your desktop. The widget looks like what's represented on the left side of this PowerPoint slide. Once you locate the widget, click the orange arrow towards the top to expand the GoToWebinar panel. Once you can view the full panel, feel free to download handouts and/or submit questions in the space below. There is time segmented at the end for Q&A. Kindly note if your question is for a specific presenter so we can direct your questions accordingly. After today's webinar, we will be sure to follow up with answers to questions that were not already covered. I'll now hand the reins over to our session leader and intelligent buildings expert, Bob Allen. Bob, take it away.
Thanks, Brian. Really appreciate that intro. Very helpful to our audience. Again, remember we have that question and answer widget to be able to submit your questions. Hopefully some of them we'll get to as we're going through. If not, we'll have that designated time at the end. During today, we are going to understand the business objectives for occupancy sensors, what sensors and cameras are available in the market, and what insight that they provide. We'll also talk about what infrastructure will be required to support these cameras and sensors, and how to use the analytics to make better decisions and measure your return on investment, and of course, wrapping up with Q&A. As we get started here today, a brief introduction of the two companies that are presenting. I am with the Siemens Company, headquartered in Watertown, Connecticut. For those who don't know, the Siemens Company manufactures layer one infrastructure, basically all of the passive infrastructure, cabling, connectivity, patch panels that allow the transmission of data and the transmission of power. Under the Siemens Company, we have a division, which is where I sit, called Convergent or Intelligent Buildings, where we've optimized infrastructure for the specific support of intelligent building devices or IoT, intelligent building infrastructure, including things like cameras, lighting, building automation systems, and in this case, sensors and cameras, thus allowing the analytics that Johan is going to be talking about as we move forward. With that, Johan, welcome to today's session. Would you mind saying hello and giving us a little background on Catalyst?
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks very much, Bob. I'm excited to be joining you today in this webinar to cover this relevant topic. At Catalyst, we believe in driving business forward with smart workspace technology. We're a South African-based business and a leader in the smart workspace technology. Our goal is to help our clients create workspaces that encourage employee engagement and productivity while reducing real estate costs and optimizing the management of facilities. Our approach is that of long-term partnerships through collaborative planning, design, and support, and of course, focusing on smart technology in support of our clients' objectives. I would like to proceed to the first discussion point of today, which is understanding the objectives for occupancy sensors.
Great.
Great stuff. So before I get going on that, allow me to define what occupancy sensor technology is so we can proceed. Occupancy sensor technology is a sensor-based technology which continuously measures human presence and occupancy levels within your building spaces, giving you valuable information about your workspace utilization, therefore helping you to understand the workspace requirements within your smart buildings. And now that we have a general understanding about sensor technology, I would like to highlight a business objective, which is visibility. The importance of visibility of your actual workspace utilization within your intelligent buildings. Occupancy sensors technology gives visibility of how and when your different office spaces are utilized through the continuous flow of sensor data. This visibility is achieved through measuring things like people counts. In other words, how many people enter or exit certain areas. Also of occupancy density, meaning to what extent or percentage is your office space used in relation to its capacity. Other information you receive is that of peak and average space utilization insights, as well as which workspaces are popular or the most popular and the least utilized workspaces. I'm going to show you a real example of this a little bit later in this session today. The next business objective I'd like to mention is to be able to improve workspace design and building efficiencies. With your sensor workspace utilization data, you can now design workspaces that work for your people and that supports your business. This will ultimately improve your building efficiencies as well when integrated with systems like your HVAC, your heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, and so on. As well as
Johan, question about that.
Yeah.
When you talk about integrating with HVAC, heating systems especially come in many different kinds. In a lot of the commercial space, we're used to the big air handlers on the roof and ductless splits, all sorts of things like that. Can sensors be tied into basic heating components like electrical baseboard heat?
Most definitely through the APIs that are available, because the data and the switching and integration is available through the APIs. So as long as the other system supports that, then the sensors can also support that.
Great.
It also supports your room reservations and your desk booking systems, which I'll also cover a bit later to help you improve on the productivity, and you'll see that a little bit later on. The next business objective I'd like to cover is that accurate building utilization information will give you strategic ability to right-size your buildings. Some questions I often encounter, I'm sure you might have heard this as well, is can we reduce our office footprint? Do we need more office space? And especially today, what does our return to work occupancy levels look like now that people are starting to return to work again after COVID-19? This technology helps you to answer these questions. Another business objective I'd like to cover is to maintain a superior user experience within your intelligent building is very important. Occupancy sensors help you to improve your user experience within the building by enabling you to create workspaces which are fit for purpose. And it also helps you to adopt an activity-based working approach for those who are researching that approach within your smart buildings to support your user activities and the work they do. Previous frustrations can be addressed of people, for example, not being able to find adequate workspaces like desks or meeting rooms, because you can now build enough meeting rooms of the right size as well. So, for example, your desks, huddle spaces, casual meeting areas, and much more. This is only achieved by having accurate and relevant data guiding you to the right decisions or through the right decision process. And then lastly, let's cover this last point, which is return on investment, which I'm sure we all understand to be paramount. Return on investment. So with data from sensors, businesses can now make informed decisions based on real information to help you achieve your return on investment. Global trends, for example, have proven that buildings on average have a 30% waste of space or underutilized space. And in some cases, I've even found some businesses with only a 30 or 40% utilized space, especially now in these strange global times we find ourselves in. This week again, or just this week, I spoke to an international business who were able to amalgamate and combine 9 buildings into one building in our city, and they use occupancy sensors in their entire intelligent building space. as an example. Can you imagine the cost savings, the return on investment, and as well as the efficiencies that can be achieved in this type of example? And that covers on the sensor portion. Bob, if you would like to talk about some business objectives from your side from an intelligent building infrastructure point of view, then that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we think about the business objectives from an infrastructure point of view, we look at things from certainly a financial perspective, as you mentioned, needing to understand that ROI. And we've noticed that when we leverage the low voltage infrastructure during in a new construction project, when we have that ability from the very beginning design phase, we're able to help save the customers over $2 million per 100,000 square feet of construction, of new construction. And not only is that just because low voltage infrastructure tends to be less expensive than other types of infrastructure out there, but it's also making sure we're partnering with the right types of partners like Catalyst, who has this type of sensor and camera infrastructure network to optimize that space. I mean, that example you gave of being able to eliminate 9 buildings in a company's portfolio, that is a monstrous impact on the operational side, which is another big component to our conversation with customers, is understanding that intelligent buildings can lower the operational cost, which is the largest part of a building's life cycle, is the operational component. So having the right infrastructure in place day one for the technology we know exists today, but also making sure that that infrastructure is designed and deployed in a way that as your technology changes and improves in year 3, 5, 10, down that throughout the life of that building, they don't have to replace the entire core of the building, the infrastructure. It's there, it's future ready, and can accommodate the changes in the building edge technology. In addition to that, we need to make sure that we're able to deliver adequate power as well as data and communication to the edge device. Now that we have the BT standard out there, we're pushing much more, nearly 100 watts through the low voltage infrastructure. So the size and the demand of those edge devices is going up. Planning the right infrastructure at the beginning to support those is essential, because again, it's so disruptive once a building is constructed to have to replace that infrastructure or upgrade it. And you certainly don't want to be basing your business decisions on utilizing existing technology that will improve your business operations, because you may have to upgrade a cabled infrastructure. All this will lead to that enhanced occupant experience, which you'll talk more about as we move forward, and making your decision-making, again, more simple in the building. Can we upgrade the edge, knowing we have that infrastructure available to us from day one, which in turn makes it a more sustainable digital building. This kind of ties into, on our last webinar, we talked a lot about creating an operating system type environment in the building, treating it like a smartphone where applications are plug and play, edge devices are plug and play, and it all ties in with the infrastructure. So I'll kind of turn that back over to you there to take a look at what sensors are available in the marketplace and what insights they can provide us to achieve all of these amazing business objectives.
Fantastic. Yeah, thanks for that, Bob. I'll do that. So the next topic will be, the next discussion point is what types of sensors are available and what type of insights do they provide. Before I do that, I'm going to ask Brian if you could maybe kick off a poll for us. I think you've got 2 questions, and I'll just hand it over to you.
Yeah, sure thing. So hopefully everybody's seen the quick poll that's up right now. The first one is, do you have any occupancy sensors in your building that you're aware of? And it's either a yes or a no, and I'll just pause for a moment to allow folks to submit answers.
Brian, I didn't know that we were excluded from voting on this. I just realized that.
Oh yes, just you and Johan.
I guess we want this data to be pure. I get it.
That's right. Okay, very good. So I think that was long enough. Close that one out. And then the next one we got is, if your company had occupancy sensors in your building, how would you think that these would be most useful? 1 is switching lights on and off, 2 for building occupancy data, 3 to count people coming in and out of the buildings, or 4 other. And just pause for another moment while folks submit some answers. Still getting some feedback here.
I can almost hear the clicking.
Okay, very good. So I'll close that one out and we'll just quickly show some poll results. So first off, let's get, do you have any occupancy sensors in your building that you're aware of? We got, looks like 58% said yes and 42% said no. And then the next poll, like that one. Next poll was if your company had occupancy sensors in your building, how would you think these would be most useful? Looks like the top choice was switching lights on off at 50%. Second was for building occupancy data at 36%, 8% for to count people coming in and out of the buildings, and then 6% was others. So those are our two polls, Johan. I'll close those out and hand it back to you.
Thank you very much. You can still see my screen, quick polling, right? Just want to make sure that you didn't steal my screen with the polling.
Yep.
Excellent. So what type of sensors do we get in the market and what insights do they provide? Let me stop presenting here for a bit because I want to get interactive. I want to get interactive and show you some examples of sensors. So you should, Bob, you should be able to see me now. So the first sensor I'd like to take out and show for you is the under-desk sensor. The under-desk sensor is also called the under-table sensor, and this sensor is placed under a desk or under a table, as you can logically imagine, or above the knee. I often call the sensor the above the knee sensor as well. It measures utilization of individual desks or focus rooms or phone booths, so places with one seat, really focused. And they have got some limitations in them in that they require higher physical maintenance to install, for example. You can imagine to deploy them across a building and to maintain, as a matter of fact, especially when your office layout has to change after you deployed them. In the past, I've heard of people kicking them by accident and some of them falling off when you haven't mounted them properly.
Johan, can those be either wireless or wired, or what type of application or deployment are those?
Yes, yeah, both types of models are out there. The popular trend is wireless.
Mm-hmm.
And because they are on desk level, people do notice them, which can sometimes also create a perception of being watched. You know, that violation of privacy, because they see them and then people talk amongst each other. But this sensor typically works for your couches and your. This type of sensor works for your desks, but it does not work for your couches. It doesn't work for casual meeting areas with movable furniture or where you just need people counting, which leads me to the next type of sensor I'd like to show you, and that is the people counter. So this type of sensor does people counting, meaning the number of people entering and exiting a building or an area, not just a building, but any area. This type of sensor is mounted above an entrance, like this, for example. It's mounted above an entrance, and it is used then to count the number of entrances and exits into and out of meeting rooms, building entrances of entire floor areas, for example, or large venues like auditoriums and those type of places. It can be used to give you live occupancy versus capacity numbers as well, helping you to manage your floor capacity thresholds. It's typically designed, like I said, for large areas and only gives you high level information, as you can imagine.
How big of a range does that cover? Like I have two visions in my head based on what you said. One is a door to a conference room, which is a pretty small area of coverage. But then you mentioned an auditorium where you might have 4 or 5 large doors next to each other going in and out.
Yeah, they can cover as big as you need, dependent on the technology, because you can overlap them as well. And you can install more than one in a space.
So 2 sensors won't count the same person twice.
Yeah, correct. It's normally people will learn as part of the design that those sensors are typically positioned very strategically to ensure the data is accurate as the people are counted in and out and in and out.
Yeah. That's amazing.
So the next type of sensor is my favorite sensor, actually. This sensor is the ceiling sensor. The sensor has got the digital component to it. since being a ceiling sensor and it can be mounted anywhere. That's why this is my favorite sensor, because it's also non-intrusive. It's an all-round smart building sensor type solution. This sensor is extremely accurate because it uses the image-based, or some people will say camera-based type technology. But very important to note is, for your peace of mind as well, is that this sensor converts images to data on the sensor itself. That's an important point, meaning no images are transmitted outside the sensor. So the sensor is completely compliant with privacy laws around the world and completely anonymous. The sensor can measure utilization of almost any area, as well as do people counting. So the sensor can also be mounted to do the same people counting that you asked about. Some examples, if I can mention some that I'll show later, is you can mount these in meeting rooms. You can mount them in above grouped desk areas to measure individual desk utilization, open plans, lounges, couches, training rooms, multi-purpose rooms, booths, casual meeting areas, dynamic spaces, and especially also where you've got the moving furniture and casual areas where people are seated and there's lots of things happening. Also worth noting is that the sensor reads occupancy even around the seated area. So if you have a 5-seater meeting room and people are standing behind it, the sensor can also pick that up.
Very versatile sensor.
Yeah, so this is why it would be my recommendation for an intelligent and a smart building, because of its wide range of use cases. So what I'd like to do is, let me show you a real life example of what an intelligent building looks like after sensors have been deployed. So what I'll just need to do is re-enable my screen, so you should be able to see the slide again.
Yes.
Okay, I'd like to show you how these sensors cover your smart building. So let me go to the correct window for us.
Great.
There we go.
I'm seeing your browser now. Yep.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yep. All I'm doing is I'm just quickly enabling these windows for us. And as you can see on the first example, is an entire floor plate. So for example, in this space, or in this view, you've got one overview visibility of the entire floor plate. So when you I just zoomed out for another for another window earlier. So what you can see here is an entire floor represented. You can see all the types of workspaces there, from meeting rooms, large meeting rooms, small meeting rooms, casual meeting areas, group desks. You can see everything that you get in an intelligent building these days. So I'd like to also go to the next screen, featuring the meeting rooms as an example. So this is to show you, when you deploy the ceiling sensor, one of the reasons why I like the sensor is it covers the area that you set. And this means it's a large meeting room, a small meeting room, as you can see on the left here. And even if you look at the space here at the top, where you've got multiple areas. And you can create multiple areas being scanned inside an area. I'll show you a little bit more about that on the next window. So this is your meeting room space. What I'd also like to show you is the group desks. The group desks, or some people call it the open plan office areas. And this is where you can see how you can create different focus points using the one sensor that I showed you can cover a large area to read occupancy of a specific area to great detail. So this is what that looks like. The next tab I'd like to show you are the casual meeting areas. So I mentioned to you earlier that you can measure casual and dynamic spaces. This is an example that I'd like to show you where that is achieved. So you can see there are a bunch of 4-seater tables here where people can move chairs in and out. You have got, let's call it a hot desk area, or some kind of an informal working area, like high-rise chairs, or bar stools, some people call them. And then you also have a meeting room space. But also look at this area here. You actually can have meeting room, or meeting room type spaces measured, which are casual meeting areas, which are large and small, as you can see here. I'm just staying on the screen so people can focus in on everything that's there to see. The next one is to show you the people counting. You can imagine any area any area here. So you've got your one sensor, you create the areas you want the counting to take place. What happens is your sensor analyzes the utilization of from restrooms to auditoriums to very large meeting spaces or reception areas or entrances to buildings. So wherever you want the people counting to take place, this is an example of those specific areas being created where you want to.
And this has to be increasingly more important with all of the COVID and extra cleaning that has to be done and disinfecting to know how many people, in that example, a restroom, how many people have gone in and out to trigger maintenance to go check out that facility.
For sure. I mean, that's 100%. A lot of people use these sensors for multiple reasons. So not just the reporting of utilization, but they also use it to support services, to support your systems in the building. So integrating it into other systems, like I will show you in a bit the booking systems. I'll show you how those integrate.
And it's also not wasting services. Rather than having someone going in and out of that restroom every hour to check on it, we don't have to have that type of schedule. We can do it because 50 people use the restroom.
Exactly, and you've got the analytics that gives you that exactly. So that's how people use it. And I'd like to show you this tool here. For this, I'm going to get up. So this is my office. Can you see my cursor here? So you can see where I'm sitting at the moment. Okay, so you can see this little purple icon. I'm the purple icon. Okay, I know I don't look purple on the camera, but I am actually purple. So this is to show you what the occupancy, so what the sensor, this is the ceiling sensor does, and to show you how responsive and how dynamic it is. I'm moving to the left.
Wow.
I think you can't see me. I'm moving to the back.
No, but
here.
I can see your purple dotness.
Yeah, you can see I'm still here. So you can still monitor my presence wherever I am walking around. So you can see why it's so accurate, right? You can imagine the data behind this. And then the purple shows that the whole space that we have created is being utilized, which goes to the analytics.
Now, do you set an occupancy limit on that space so that we know it's your office, therefore it might have a capacity limit at, say, 2 or 3 people in case you had someone in your office for a meeting? So will this alert somebody that perhaps you have 4 people in there or 5 people in there?
Yes, exactly. That's done on the analytics side, which I'll show you. Cool. So that is the interactive slides I wanted to show you. The next discussion I wanted to talk, well, that we maybe you can cover for us, is the infrastructure and what will be required from an intelligent building space when it comes to the actual infrastructure side. But before that, I just wanted, since people might ask, is that from a sensor point of view, we typically need PoE, Power over Ethernet network infrastructure, because that just seems to be the most efficient. These sensors also do have a feature where they work with power and then the network cable, but PoE is much more efficient. And then typically we need an IoT Wi-Fi network, which tends to be typical in smart buildings these days anyway. But I'll hand that over to you to discuss the infrastructure, Bob, from your side.
Yeah, thank you. And you're absolutely right. You know, PoE is the driving power distribution behind intelligent buildings because it is so cost effective. I think people forget at times that even AC intelligent building devices have a network port behind them somewhere. They have that data transmission through structured cabling. So in most cases, we can utilize that same infrastructure to deliver power and oftentimes eliminate the need for an additional infrastructure just to bring power to the device. Now, I had mentioned earlier that the Siemens company specializes in intelligent building infrastructures that are designed for specific support in these types of environments. And the first thing that I'll talk about is a zone enclosure. We highly advise our customers to use a zone deployment in their buildings. And the reason for that is the zone box itself is a passive enclosure. And what we're doing is we're bringing that connectivity out closer to the edge. we had mentioned many times today already that the edge needs to be dynamic in an intelligent building as sensors improve, as bandwidth requirements become heavier, as power requirements become heavier. So the ability to not have to always home run new cable every time an edge device technology changes saves the customers a lot of money, a lot of disruption. And then from that zone enclosure, we can actually patch to the nearest edge devices. And in the case of our conversations today, it's sensors and cameras. That could be light fixtures. That could be copy machines or desktops, phones, any edge device now in a building that is being designed as an IP-enabled edge device can now be connected through the zone enclosure, have immediate connectivity. And I'll say one of the biggest advancements that that we've had here, a big game changer that we've had here at the Siemens company, is the development of our field terminated plug. Because prior to that, the deployment of intelligent buildings from an infrastructure side was fairly cumbersome and at times complicated, because you would have to measure out the exact location of every device and pre-order patch cables and certain lengths, and then have to be able to coordinate that on a job site. So now with these field terminated RJ45s, we could simply, installers can simply cut the cables to length in the field, have a much cleaner installation, less waste, faster time on the deployment. And these terminations have one of the smallest form factors in the industry, as well as one of the fastest terminating times. So just that infrastructure can do so much beyond powering and controlling edge devices. The thought that goes behind it, the engineering that goes behind it, can help with much faster, much neater, and much more effective infrastructure deployments. So having set the table with the physical layer and being able to deliver, move all of your data and all of your power, Johan, let's have a look and see what analytics can actually do for the customers.
Great stuff. I'll do that. I just had one question. That is, something that you can maybe talk about is that I've seen that a lot of infrastructure, so the design of an infrastructure in a building it's almost like it's turning into an ecosystem really of everything needing to be able to connect and interconnect, right? So, and that's where your IP and your Wi-Fi network and those things are so important in your smart building. So it's not just about that cabling, but it's about, like you say, to design the infrastructure to future-proof the technology, and not just future-proof it for changes, but for your integration into other systems. Like you said, so many devices are released with your network connection ports and so forth. So that's the ecosystem point.
Yeah, absolutely. And the goal from design to deployment of a building is like I said earlier, making the entire building plug and play from a device perspective to a software perspective. And the infrastructure is what's going to allow that to occur.
Excellent. So from that, I'd like to talk about the next discussion point, which is the analytics. How to use analytics for decision making and return on investment. So the analytics which one gets from occupancy sensor data is extremely valuable for your intelligent building and your return on investment to help you with your strategic decision making, your planning, and to achieve that return on investment that we are discussing. Analytics that we get from the sensor data should be used to gain insights to enable decision making, as we see here, for the workplace, the people, and the infrastructure. And you can almost think about the requirements or the needs of each of these categories. The workplace has got requirements, people have got requirements, and then the infrastructure from an intelligent building space. And that's why the analytics is so important, because it really drives the decision making. It gives you that visibility that we spoke about earlier. Let me show you some examples of analytics which can be achieved using the occupancy sensor data to give you the insights you need about your intelligent building and its utilization. So I'll tab to a screen here that I'd like to show you. And you can see this blue half circle, right?
Yes.
Shall I say it's almost blue? the whole half circle. So that's the first that is the first data or the first analytic I'd like to show you. Okay, so let me just back to that. There we go. So analytics is used, as I said, to give you insights around your building and the utilization of the various spaces. The first one is, what is the average work, for example, what is the average work spot or workspace occupancy during the day? So this, as you can see, is a very high level snapshot that you can gain by opening up your analytics and looking at a specific building or a specific floor. Remember, all of this data can go from building wide to floor to specific workspace. But in this case, what is the average workplace occupancy during the day? In this scenario, you'll see it's got a high average occupancy. So from there, you can make some decisions, or that's where your visibility starts. The next one, if I can show you on the left, the one on the right is almost the same, but let's focus on the left-hand side. Here is the occupation of both meeting rooms and the different types of workspaces, the different kind of workplaces that you get. It shows you your average occupancy as well as your peak occupancy according to workspace type. So if you look on the left, you've got huddle spaces, and then you've got quiet flex desks, meeting rooms, and video conference rooms. And immediately when you look at this, you can start to gain understanding about your workspace trends. And from there, you can gain understanding about everything else around that. So in other words, the importance and the need for the furniture, for the electricity, for the technology behind it. Are you focusing on the right things in the right spaces? For example, if we go from the left, what do you see here? Which is the most popular space in terms of average? It's the huddle room, right? So the huddle room is the most popular, followed by the quiet or the flex desk, a quiet type workspace, flex desk, and then meeting rooms. And then you can see this video, Bob, you can see this video conference bar graph.
Yeah, what's interesting about this, right? So if we're optimizing our space, then really the average occupancy and the peak occupancy would be very close to each other. So they may have that need for that video conferencing room, but it's really being underutilized. I don't know how many peak occupancy moments there are, but it doesn't seem like a lot of them.
Yeah, so let me show you how I, for example, interpret this graph, which is interesting. My first thought was video conference rooms or video conference spaces. We might not need that many because there's only 50% average occupancy. But if you look at the peak occupancy, there is a specific time in the month where the video conference facilities was used at peak. So for example, you can say that it is very much needed. On the right hand side, you can see a different kind of view of your average and peak occupancy based on certain dates. So you'll select your video conference room, or you select your meeting room, or your desk, or your quiet meeting, your quiet flex spaces, and then you can see your average utilization and your peak utilization trending there. So I always say that the space above the peak is typically considered your underutilized or your wasted space. And I have seen many clients and many businesses where this graph, where the average sits around there, around 10-15%, and the peak sits around 40-50%. So therefore, you can imagine if that peak line runs around 50%, then your people aren't back to work yet as they should be or as they could be. So you need to encourage them to return to work somehow, or you need to, you can let go of some of your specific workspaces, be it meeting rooms or whatever that workspace might be. So
that's really insightful data.
I mean, exactly, and it just gives it to you in such an understandable format. And for example, this one is an average occupancy percentage of meeting rooms with weekdays. Now, don't let me leave this yellow line to you, and you can tell me what this trend is like. So Friday is the yellow line, and that's the occupancy of Fridays as an example. And then your Mondays and your Tuesdays is your blue and your red. So blue and red is sitting around 80% plus minus 80, and you've got 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. from the left to the right. And so you can see what happens around lunchtime. People step away from their desks, right? Or they step away, they leave meeting rooms. But you can still see there's a high occupancy even over lunchtime, right? So that's very interesting. So some people say, let's do our changes and let's do things over lunchtime. Just be careful because there's still a lot of people working in that time. So you can see this trend, for each day of the week. Then you've got some most popular meeting rooms as an example. This type of data, this analytic takes the data and it sorts automatically your meeting rooms according to its popularity. So you can see which are the most popular meeting rooms, and then you can further investigate why. Because if you scroll down, you might see this meeting room is used 96% of the time. There might be a block booking, so it might be that somebody has booked that meeting room as their office, which people don't want to see, facility managers don't want to see, but at least you can investigate that. It could be a good trend because a lot of people are using the space. It's a relevant space. It's a useful space. It helps people in their work. So it helps people to be productive. And then you can scroll down and you can see why is this room, not utilized, as the others are. I saw a graph earlier in the week of this where the least utilized rooms were around 10%, 20%. So that does, of course, vary according to building to building.
When you have conference rooms that really only have 10, 15% utilization, should the thought process be that maybe that room is better served as huddle space or as cubicle space, anything other than, we might be able to bring more occupants into the building safely because we can take that space that's not really being utilized as designed for other uses?
Yes, spot on. That's exactly how that data can be interpreted. I'll show you a little bit. There's another graph that goes in line with what you've just said and what you've just said you can do from this data as well. So, for example, actually, let me jump there now because I can always come back up. While I'm on that topic, I'll show you here different meeting room sizes. So you've got 6 seaters, 8 seaters, 12 seaters, 24 and 38. And what the colors represent is the number of attendees per meeting room size. So if you look at this, how amazing is this? You can see with the data that all these meeting rooms are at this moment used by 1, 2, or 3 people. Why? Because you see the color code there. 1 person, 2 people, 3 people. So 1 is blue, 2 people is red, and 3 people are, that color is orange. And so the 6-seater, you can see sometimes is being used by 6 people, or 5 people, or 4 people, whereas the larger rooms are used by 1, 2, or 3 people. And in this example, this has to open your eyes about your workspace like nothing else can, because now you can see, do we actually need a 38-seater, or do we need a 12-seater, or do we need a 20-seater? Do people use it? And you can see in this example, it's very clear you need 2-seaters and 4-seaters. That's what I would recommend. I would recommend in this workspace, just by looking at this, if I only had to look at this, although we need to look at the other data sets or the other analytics, I would say, you need 2 and 4-seaters because they are widely used. Of course, 1-seaters as well. So that's the quiet rooms, the phone booths, individual work, private workspaces. So that's just as important on this analytic. What I'd like to also show you is average booking versus occupancy. Now, this is incredible because most people have booking systems, right, to book rooms or to book desks. And what you find is if you don't have a system to manage bookings properly and to manage your desk and your room bookings properly, then what you'll find is people book rooms or they book desks, but they don't show up. And what happens then is you have booked space, but not utilized, right? Because now people book spaces and they don't utilize it. Because I found that people are just lazy, they don't cancel their bookings. So when you implement a proper booking system, then the booking system can be integrated to the sensor technology, as you see here. And what will happen is when someone books a room or they book a desk, then and they don't show up for that booking. So if they don't show up at the meeting room after they book the meeting room for a certain time. Let's say after 30 minutes since the start of the meeting. If there's no one in the room, the sensor will know that. It will then tell the booking system to end that booking automatically or to cancel it, which means that space immediately becomes available for someone else to book and use, which means you gain your real estate space back for utilization. And you, of course, when people walk the floor and they look for a meeting room or a desk, they will find it because those spaces are available. So this example shows you that the average booking and occupancy percentage. So it shows you the bookings follow the occupancy. And if you don't have a proper booking system, then this will be way out of whack between those two. I personally love this one as well because it shows you something that's very unique to sensors, and that is the green space is the booked and occupied. Remember, I just said to you, people need to use the spaces that they've booked, right? So when you implement the sensor and the booking together, you'll find this booked and occupied space is 59%. So these spaces were used as they were booked. Then this yellow, is it yellow? Yeah, let's call it yellow, not orange. This is not booked, but occupied. This is impossible. This information is impossible to get without sensors, because with this you can see, listen, 5% or 10% of our people, whatever your stat might be, just arrived at a desk or just arrived at a meeting room, used it, never booked it. Now imagine if you were only looking at your booking system, you would say, oh, let's make a decision, based on the fact that 60% of our spaces were, we only need 60% utilization, but you actually need 65. So your meeting rooms will actually use 65 or 70% of the time, based on this additional visibility that you get. The red is booked but not occupied. Sorry, it's showing a no-show. Yeah, so that's booked but not occupied. So that's the no-show stat I spoke about. When people don't arrive, so that's fine. And then the gray, this area is your not utilized space. Okay. Then then you've got more stats, more information that I can show you. Just a couple more. Let's call it one or two more, and that is your peak and average occupancy by workspace type, as well as your peak and occupancy by floor type, by floor. So your third, fourth, fifth. On this stat, you can very quickly see the fifth and the sixth floor are the most popular in terms of peak and average utilization. So something's up on the ninth floor or on the third floor. People are using it less. Okay, and then this shows the same, but it shows it according to 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. from the left to right. And you can clearly see the ninth floor in this example has got a lot higher utilization in this specific space. And again, it takes all the data, analyzes, and it gives you this information.
That's great. You really understand how your space is being used.
I mean, imagine. So without sensors, it's almost impossible to have this kind of visibility. I want to say it is impossible because, I mean, you just walk blind, right? You just walk blind in your intelligent or smart building. You've got, and you don't know really how your workspaces are used. I'd like to show you one more example before we can go to the Q&A, perhaps, or if you want to talk about the analytics from an intelligent building space as well. But I'd like to show you, this is an example of a booking platform. I want to show you how the sensor works with whatever booking platform you've got. So in this example, we've got the Mapic international global booking platform. It enables you, of course, to book meeting rooms, a place to meet. If you go there, you can find a place to work, any type of workspace, offices, short stay, flex, focus, any type of space, or meeting rooms, ad hoc meeting rooms, conference rooms, whatever, lounges, whatever you need. What I wanted to show you is, let's say I would like to book a meeting room. Now watch this. I want to book a meeting room. So I need to find a meeting room that's available. So without a sensor, this meeting room would be available. Why do okay, there we go, the data just came through. So this room shows it's booked until 8 o'clock. This one shows it's free until, for 10 minutes from now. And if you scroll down, you go to this meeting room, it's not booked, right? But it's red. So why is it red when it's not booked? If I go into that meeting room and I want to book it, you'll see here it says it appears to be in use. Now that's such valuable information, because if you have 1,000 users in your building or 500 users, they need to book a meeting room, they need to book a desk. And if the booking, a lot of times the booking system says that a space is available, but in fact there's someone in that space. So this is after you've integrated it. This is an example of that integration, where it will clearly show you that, before you go to this meeting room, which is a very smart meeting room, by the way, before you go book it for your 15 people or your 10 or 5 people, you might want to think about another space, because it actually appears to be in use, meaning the sensor has picked up there's someone in the room. That's what it means. It means somebody's actually in that space. So it cautions you, and again, that's impossible without the sensor. So that's just to talk about your productivity. That could be, that will be improved, and your overall user experience. And that's it. I mean, Bob, I don't know if you want to talk about some intelligent building infrastructure, some analytics from your point of view, or if that kind of covers your point as well, because that can take us to the questions and answers and the next section.
Yeah, I don't want to hold us up on questions and answers, but what I do want to just mention in regards to the data and things like that is everything you mentioned, especially in relation to conference rooms and all of that, is very valuable. Spatial analytics is great. But there's so much more benefit to just being able to utilize that data with other systems in the building. You touched on HVAC. When we think of building just as a digital environment, it's about getting that data and putting it in a way that other systems can benefit from the collection of that data. So while the spatial analytics stand on their own as a huge, huge driver and the biggest driver to move forward with a solution like this, there are so many other side benefits that are impossible to explore here in a 1-hour webinar, and are different in every building. But leveraging that data for health and wellness, being able to calculate the amount of outdoor air you need to bring into a building to maintain quality air quality. First responders, emergency responses, knowing how many people are in a building, knowing where people are in a building. So if you have an evacuation situation, like perhaps a fire or something to that extent, or even a medical emergency, to be able to locate people and direct first responders to the right spot at any given time.
Exactly. I mean, and just one example, if I can interrupt you there, was that I thought about as well, and that I've seen, is that people often, when they need or when you design infrastructure, they talk to people about what they need. So they talk to business managers about what their staff needs and what their people need. But with this data, it combined with what business says, you now know what infrastructure is needed where. So where do you need network points? Where do you need cabling? Where do you need even workstations, right? Where do you need provisioning for workstations? Where do you need technology-enabled rooms? And so what type of technology do you need in which spaces? So taking combining the data, it's taking the analytics, taking lessons learned information from previous buildings, and listening to what business says as well. Combining that, you will get a very accurate building, I think, and also future-proof building.
Yeah. Do you have an example of where the data from your solution here has been utilized to help enhance HVAC or other systems in the buildings?
So
I know I'm putting in the spot, but
yeah, no. I'm trying to think of an example where one bank that I personally have been working with over the years, they used to have big problems with their air conditioning, and so they actually had people who they had to send to certain areas to manually adjust air conditioning in a very smart building, by the way. They had to send people manually to change air conditioning, and they had to do it reactively, right? So there was no predictive or no analysis, or no real-time visibility. After rolling out the sensor technology and the APIs and the information, they could now change that to be automated. So based on your occupancy, you set your air conditioning to function at a certain level. And so then you obviously reduce those amount of help desk queries in the building.
Yeah, and I want to point out one of our listeners has a lot of questions related to HVAC and airflows and things like that. And the answer to those questions doesn't lie in today's session, because what we're doing here is we're triggering other systems proactively with the data. Hey, we have 5 people coming in, or there are 5 people in here. So to be able to tell you how quickly outside air could be brought into that space, or how quickly the air quality can change, what we tell you is with the real-time data, those actions can be triggered immediately. And then the result of those actions is going to be the output of the HVAC system, of the air handlers, those sorts of things. So while we can't give you exact ratios and timing and things of that nature, what we can tell you is this data will trigger those actions in a building immediately. And then it's subject to the capacity of those systems, which hopefully are designed in an intelligent way as well when that building's being designed, or if it's a legacy building, that existing capacity exists to make those changes very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, essentially it's an enabler, right? So it enables something that you weren't able ever to do before. So before you had zero visibility, and now you've got analytics to do something. But then the next level is to take the same data that creates analytics and send that to targeted systems. And like you said, exactly, I normally tell people it's an input-output bidirectional, sometimes bidirectional, but let's call it input-output dependent through your API, meaning your one system needs to be able to talk to another system, handing over an instruction to do a new trigger. So, and that's why your HVAC can be fine-tuned because of this enabler, this occupancy sensor, not just the occupancy sensor data flow becomes an enabler that you can use to manage your whatever other smart systems you've got in the system. Where without it, you don't really have that. And so that's really the key point to bring across. It's an technology enabler as well.
At the risk of being perceived as sarcastic here, Johan, can't I just hire somebody with a clipboard to walk around and count how many people are in these spaces?
Yes, yes, you can go for it. Why not? What's stopping you from doing that? You can do that, but I think you predicted me to end with a but. We have seen that being tried, and remember, the moment that person leaves a workspace, that data is old. So the moment, let's say you've got a clipboard and you've got someone walking around, or a tablet, right? So tablet and it's live. It's always, you can't have, if you've got an office plate of 300 seats, you can't have 300 people monitoring every seat. So in other words, you typically have someone walking around. The moment they click something and they walk away, that data is old. And what, for example, this ceiling sensor does, this point grab ceiling sensor does, is it transmits data every 60 seconds. Okay, and you saw the live view with me walking around in the office. So what you want to end up with, accurate data and relevant data. If you have someone walking with a clipboard or a tablet, just by saying the data is old, it's a snapshot of last week Thursday, and I've got no view of what's happening now, you can poke 50 holes into that analytics study that was done potentially just by saying, oh, the data, that's last week's data. It's not the same anymore this week. After we returned to work, and it was different on Monday from Friday, and it was different on Wednesday. So there's just too many gaps in that methodology, in that method. I like to call that as, it does work sometimes when you have a very, very small, like one meeting room, right? And someone sits out the meeting room and you've got someone that can tick and when it's reused, but it's not efficient. So we're talking about intelligent buildings, smart buildings, and the way to do that really is with like the ceiling sensor technology.
So you got about 30 seconds to answer this next question, because I need a little time to wrap up here. But a couple of good technical questions. One, if a person is giving someone else a piggyback ride, would the sensor count both people? And I'm going to tie that into another question, which is the sensor with the imaging more accurate than just a people counter sensor? And lastly, what colors do the sensors come in? 3 for the price of 1 here.
Yeah, great stuff. So if someone's piggybacking someone, it's the first time ever I've heard that question. It will most likely count one person because it counts. It does count the small space I'm at. But again, it's the first time I've had that question, and you saw my head and shoulders on the live data that I showed you. So there is the chance that it will read both people, because you can see it's extremely precise. The imaging on
Do
it
you know
is
the
extremely
space that would
precise.
need to be between people? Is there like if people are 6 inches apart, are they going to count that as 2 people? If they're a
I've
foot
seen
apart?
people I don't know the measurement, but I've seen people extremely close next to each other, and it does see 2 people. I've seen people on that live example that I've showed you, someone sitting at the desk, someone standing up against that desk where someone else is seated, and it'll show both people. So it's
Right.
very,
And
and then the
lastly, what
sensors
colors
come
are
in.
available?
Roughly speaking, your white and your grays and your blacks. Okay, so white, grays, and blacks.
Great.
And then I think there was a people counting sensor that was asked. Oh yeah, that's also accurate. The people counting sensor is very accurate. However, remember, it's high level, very high level. So it's building entrance, floor entrance, and that's it. You've got no visibility on your floor plate, and so you lack just a lot of that analytics if you don't have a ceiling type sensor deployed, as an example. So it works, but it's very, very high level.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I think we're at the end of our time, right? This is a 60-minute session today. So let me have a couple of remarks here. First off, Johan, that was amazing. Even myself being immersed in the intelligent building world, I learned a lot from the things you shared today that I will take with me going forward. But before we close today's session, I'd like to say a huge thank you to all of you for joining us today. We hope you found this interesting and look forward to seeing you at the follow-up sessions. The next session is scheduled for April 29th and will be about mitigating risk by utilizing intelligent buildings security systems. And also a reminder that if you registered for and attend all 4 sessions, then you're entered to win a raffle for a chance to win a free Yeti cooler from the Siemens company, as well as a free camera from Access Communications and a few other surprises in there. We'll send a recording of today's webinar out to you all in the coming days. And if you have any questions or would like any additional information on how Siemens or Catalyst or Access can support your intelligent building needs, feel free to contact us at any time. Thank you again. Stay healthy and take care, everyone. Thank you, Johan.
Thanks. Thank you, Bob. Thanks, everyone.